So how do you stay connected as a couple?
I like to use the functional relationship approach. We've got functional medicine. I've already coined the whole functional education. Let's talk about a functional relationship and how to incorporate mind, body, and soul into your most beautiful, intimate relationship here in this world.
Let's find out.
Mama says namaste.
Mama says namaste.
Making a family can be easy and fun.
Oh yeah, but raising a family can be a whole different story.
From spouses to kids to the crazy daily grind, life often directs us away from connection and more into reactive chaos.
If you're tired of that cycle and are seeking something beyond the picket fence blues, this is the show for you.
I'm Ashley.
And I'm Nathan.
And we're here to take you from chaos to clarity by bringing awareness and intention into your home, not waiting for one day, and highlighting how
the uniqueness in each of us strengthens all of us.
Take a deep breath in and let's start a brand new day. With Mama says namaste.
All right, so I had talked about we've got functional medicine, and we know functional medicine as looking at the mind, body, soul approach of your health and well-being. So instead of going in and, you have one intestinal issue with digestion, instead of just looking at that, they're going to look at, okay, what are you eating? How are you exercising? What's your mindset and your state of mind? Are you suffering with depression?
I want a pill for my relationship, Ashley. Just give me a pill to make it all go away.
All right. As you have, if you've followed us for long, that's not our model. And we are very much looking at what is the cause for the symptom to begin with.
Well, good health doesn't happen just like by taking a pill, or one day you just wake up and you're like, I feel great. It's one of those things that's compounding. It happens over time because of the choices that you make. If you make bad choices, that compounds over time, and it's fun to kind of realize that.
And so when we start looking at that and realizing how many things build, we can start to see how intricate it is. And so it's not just looking at the physical aspects of your body. You look at mind, body, and soul. And so then we took it over into functional education. With functional education, we talk about how we believe in lifelong learning, that it's all inclusive, that it's not compartmentalized into something specific, like test scores or grades in school or classrooms, but it is lifelong. The world is our school, everyone is our teacher, and we're looking for all of those multifaceted ways of learning. Now, let's look at a functional relationship. In a functional relationship, and when we're talking about our most intimate relationship, so these are your husbands and wives, your partners, what does that look like, and how do you invest in it? Do you just think it is a heart connection, or can we look at...
It's Valentine's Day. You got to nail Valentine's Day.
Right, and that's it, right?
That's it. You're done for the year, right?
Right. What else is it? What else brings up that? What is the mind, body, soul? How can we address that when it comes to our relationships?
Well, and just like good health, you have to, measure that and watch it every single day. For having a good physical outcome, you need to exercise and move your body on the daily basis. And in order to have a healthy relationship, you need to connect. And all those require making intentional time. You have to take time to exercise. I mean, my favorite is to double. Let's go for a walk and talk this thing out. But that's a great way to just kind of multitask with that. But you got to make time and get intentional about it. I mean, when I was growing up, that was something my parents did religiously. Was they went for a walk and they talked every single day. Now that was also a time that we knew, well, there's a window of an hour and a half that we could get away with just about anything.
Oh, the stories of the Logston boys growing up.
Thank God we had girls. But but yeah, I mean, you just to like your parents do a date night, every week. That's intentional time that they've set aside that's holy. The same is true for working out. When you're working out, you've got to make that time. Usually it's early in the morning to make that fit.
So you're addressing a lot when it comes to physical activity and being active together. When we talk about connecting on the physical aspect, there are so many elements of this. And first and foremost, it's addressing your personal health and well-being. And it is looking at, am I taking care of my own mind, body, and soul? Am I being active? And am I, stretching my mind? Am I working on my heart? And all of those things are opportunities to invite a partner in for different elements. And so, I mean, I love those concepts of going out and being physical together. And we oftentimes do this until I get too much humble pie and can't keep up with you on biking.
Oh, come on, babe.
But
That's why I'm shooting for the tandem.
I know. He wants to put me on a tandem bike so I can keep up with him. Anyway, beyond just exercise, though, when we want to connect on physical and relationships, what we're looking at is sexual and non-sexual touch. Like, what is your positive touch? First and foremost, when it comes to the sexual aspect of things, we say that it is hard to remain emotionally distant when we physically connect on a daily basis. And oftentimes what I'm talking about there is more of that intimate connection. It's the loving caress. It's the vulnerable intimacy of touch, and having that hands with the person that you love.
Yeah. I mean, just those holding hands. I mean, it's those easy things that you can thread into your daily life that it's easy to leave out too. You know, it's easy to forget that we haven't held hands in a week, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But if you start to realize that and pick that up, it can become, you know, just one of those reminders that that other person is there and they care. Because I think that's where people fall apart, is they can feel alone trying to send out these vibes, but the other person is just vibing on their own jam, and then it just becomes if they're going to do their thing, I better find my thing, because you know, I don't want to just stand here waiting. And so then you end up in two different worlds, and if you don't stop to go and touch that person, you know, my favorite is to go and massage your shoulders. That's an easy backup touch. I can just come from behind and put my hands on your shoulders and just gently massage. Look, you're asking for it right now.
I know. Ooh, I love it when you do that.
Yeah.
Well, and that leads into the non-sexual too. It doesn't all have to be sexual.
That's what I mean.
We do connect we connect with a kiss and hand holding and more of the intimacy we do that on a daily basis. And beyond that, though, we are doing positive non-sexual touch. Yeah, when we come across, walk past each other, it's your little shoulder rub. It's, a quick back scratch. It's, playing with each other's hair or whatever. It's just an affectionate touch. And the more we have made that something that is a habit with each other, I mean, we also do it with our children. And what happens is we have this comfort of physical touch with one another. And it doesn't mean that we're constantly all up on each other. Some of us like our personal space way more than others. And some of us would not necessarily touch normally. I, as a mom, have had definite times where I am super touched out and I don't really want the touch. And even then, I have noticed that when I am proactive with touch, I don't feel as resentful about it happening. I remember having this happen when I had a coaching client who was completely touched out by her very, very hands-on kid, and her child was always wanting to be hanging on her, and she was like, I love her, but I need some personal space. And so we talked about being proactive, and instead of her child running to her and clinging to her proactively initiating a 60-second hug in the morning. And for 60 seconds, she does nothing but sit there and hold and hug that little girl. And what happened is that girl had way more comfort running around and doing other things, and not as much need to hold on to her mom because she'd gotten that boost first thing in the morning. And so sometimes being proactive can really help that. And then for intimate relationships, I've done the same practice of 60-second hugs, where it's just holding each other in the morning, just in a hug, no other agenda, as a way to really help reconnect a couple on the non-sexual side. Because I think oftentimes we can get into a rut as a couple where any touch, I know as a woman, the first thought is, he just wants to have sex again. I'm too tired. And so you don't open the door for any touch, because you feel like if you do, then you're going to have to go all the way and you're tired and you don't want to. So practice getting comfortable. And I mean, we did this. Yeah. Practice getting comfortable with just the touch, no other agenda, not going any further than that. And so giving just a 60-second hug is a moment for both to just feel like you're just right there. You're there, you're holding, you're hugging each other, and you're present in the moment, and that's it. No other expectations beyond just holding each other.
Another cool thing to do is to stare into each other's eyes. Or just to sit there. How long do you do that? It's like 60 seconds.
Staring for a minute into each other's eyes is very unnerving, and of course we've done it. Doing that and holding hands, and so we still have the physical connection, but looking into each other's eyes can definitely add another level of
there's apps
vulnerability and awareness.
There's apps that you can search for that will have little cues that can help you guys start to think of things. And sometimes it's easier to read something and say, why don't we do, from this smorgasbord than to bring up, hey, I want to stare at you for a minute. Let's try that.
There are so many great exercises and things to keep a spark alive in a relationship. And sometimes doing those games or having an app or something like that can give you a little third-party prompt, which kind of takes away maybe the discomfort of, I don't want to be the one to suggest something, or the just insecurity of not knowing what to suggest. So yes, on the physical aspect, are you connecting both sexually and non-sexually with your partner? Are you making the space to do that? And are you intentionally reaching out and touching one another? And then the second one then is that we have our mind. I mean, this is the mind part of it. This is, are we taking the time to affirm each other, to build each other up, to challenge each other on where we are and on our own growth? And do we take that time to have those sorts of conversations? Nathan and I do a lot of checking in with one another and seeing, what's on each other's minds, how we're feeling, how we're doing. And then, what are we reading? What are we growing with? What news have we heard about? Sharing those stories with one another. And we're also giving each other feedback, just like Nathan did right before this, where I've been a bit testy this morning. It's really blazing hot right now, and we can't have the fans on and do podcasting, so we're both sweating like crazy. My internet just went out right before this, and I'm trying to figure out how to get over to do a meeting after this on Zoom. And so I'm irritable. And so I had to I needed to have a little hearty conversation with Nathan and do a little reset and have some humble pie and say, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for not communicating in a way that was a little bit more considerate of others in the family.
And that's fine. Just tell them. That's the thing is, like, once we both realize what's cooking and where we're coming from, I
have two options. I can say okay and learn from it, or I can get mad and
hold the line and say no.
And the reality is, we live in a really small space. We're in a fifth wheel RV. Where am I going to stomp off to? Where am I going to have the silent treatment? How am I going to shut these people out of my life? I can't. If I shut the door, I'm gonna melt because I don't have enough airflow in the back room.
There you go.
So I don't have a choice. I have to choose to show up here. And so the mind connection is, are you willing to challenge each other to grow and to check each other if you're not, and the other part of it is to affirm one another and to show gratitude. And that I can't stress enough. I mean, you don't go overboard when it comes to affirmation and gratitude.
No, because your memory only takes in it was 6 or 10 gratitudes. Then it like absorbs it. It's like, oh yeah, I'm really appreciated, man. They love me. But one negative, it's like
everything else is thrown out the window.
They hate me.
We have a negativity bias. We hold on to the negatives and we miss the positives. And for some people, it's really easy. If I'm going to tell you 5 positives and then I put a negative on the end, that's the only thing you heard.
Yep.
And so how much do we affirm and build up those around us? How often do we say thank you? And I really appreciate what you do. I thanked Nathan today for him having the willpower to stick with it and learn enough on YouTube to fix the AC in our diesel truck when he in no way, shape, or form knows or had the desire to be a diesel mechanic.
Well, it has nothing to do with diesel, but
Oh yeah, that too.
I'm not a certified mechanic.
You're not a certified
Nor
mechanic.
have I been properly trained. But, YouTube has a plethora of information if you're willing to wade through the mumbo jumbo.
Yeah.
But, it's the importance of communicating your pride of your significant other, especially in front of your children, I think is really valuable because it opens their eyes to, well, you know what? Mommy she does work hard for this family so that we can enjoy this life. Or, Daddy does. He cooks every meal for us and, never complains about it. Well, maybe just complains a little bit every once in a while. But,
what happens
they
is
start to recognize
Yeah.
that it's bigger than them, and that when they see that it takes both of us and that we're dependent on each other and we're thankful and grateful for each other, then that juice keeps flowing on to them. It's that slow compounding effect.
Right. And they start thanking us too. And that's pretty amazing to have our kids thank us for the work that we do in the family. And I love seeing that they do that. They're aware of that in our household, and it's really easy for them to acknowledge that in other households.
Well, and what I love is when they're in other households, they hear discrepancies. Like, well, instead of coming back to us and saying, hey, it's not fair that those kids, their parents pay them to do the dishes and vacuum the floor. They are shocked and horrified that, well, why? That's just part of being a good roommate. Why wouldn't you contribute to being?
I love that that's the response,
yeah.
and not just the desire for them to get paid too.
But that's when you're on the same page and you're all talking about, if I choose to not really try at cooking, well, everybody tastes that, and everybody has to decide, is that what we're willing to go through? And so, being honest, whether you're going to show up in that situation and how you're going to show up, it's really important to talk about that and praise that in front of your kids so they see that bigger picture.
Yeah. Oh, and we just watched an Insta reel. I sent it to the whole family because I thought, yes, this right here, we've got to watch this and pay attention to it. And it was talking about a mom who no longer talks to any of her family, her husband or her children, about helping her around the house. And she said, that implies that if you are helping somebody around the house, that you're helping them with their job. You are helping to pick up the slack of all the things they need. When the reality is you're cleaning the house you live in. You are a roommate and you are cleaning the house you live in. And you are just as much responsible for it as everyone else in the household. And so I loved that idea of throwing out the word help for helping each other in that way. You're not helping mommy because that makes you think that implies that it's like extra credit. This is mommy's job and I'm actually helping her out here and taking the weight off of her.
Yeah.
And that's really not the truth. It's we're helping around the house.
This was in domestic work in general.
Yeah.
It was normalizing that everybody is responsible for it. It's not just one person.
Right.
Shouldn't have to be responsible for that
Right.
whole model. One person needs to make sure it gets done and tidy it up, but everybody can help.
Right. So with domestic labor, yeah, we are helping to create a beautiful home. Yes, we are not helping to cover for one person's job in there. Yeah. Okay, that was a little rant.
It's okay,
Little
babe.
tangent there. Okay, so anyway, we've got our mind, we've got our body. What about the soul? When I talk about the soul, I'm talking about the heart connection and how willing you are to be vulnerable with your partner. And that's things like, it's not just when we come to mind, there have been times that Nathan and I both have challenged each other on how are we growing, or are we, getting a little too stuck on sitting on a phone, or
I'm getting I need to start reading a book again. I haven't picked up a book in a while.
Well, and you just gave me a little reminder on my workout that I hadn't done in a while.
Oh, yeah,
and so
that's true.
we challenge each other to grow, and we do that with the mind. But when it comes to the soul, that's hey, when you did this, it made me feel like this, and I want to talk to you about it. Or I'm really struggling right now, and I've got these fears going on in my head, and I want to, be upfront with you about where we're at. when we're sharing our heart connection, I feel like those are those vulnerabilities and those insecurities, and we tend to keep those ones pretty close to ourselves. And sometimes we can do one of two things. We can completely stuff them down, and then they end up festering, and they result in all kinds of wonderful physical manifestations or mental blocks in your mind, and we can stuff them. Another thing we can do is absolutely deny them and ignore that it's a part of it. And then we can sometimes react when our family maybe pushes that little trigger that makes us retaliate out of our pain points and being vulnerable. And so,
but when we're all vulnerable with each other, then it allows us to have a conversation about the issue rather than sometimes a screaming match. You know, when a lot of times when we're trying to protect ourselves, we can get very defensive and try to deflect the energy away from ourselves and onto others. And a lot of times it's important to just take the feedback as feedback. It's not. You know, I think we've gotten into a nice habit of that. But, you know, you have to kind of get into a trust space of, you have to build up to that level.
I was going to say, we didn't start that way.
Well,
it was deposits and withdrawals for sure. It was us working on how comfortable we were. And if I share this, how are you going to handle that? Like, how are you going to take that in a way that doesn't make me feel worse about myself?
Yeah.
And I think that's the more we work on fostering trust and respect, the more easy this is. And so, and honestly, the way that we build the trust and respect is by being willing to share a little bit. It's that whole chicken or egg.
Yeah.
You know, are you vulnerable first and then you have the trust and respect that comes, or the trust and respect come? And then, well, some of it is in sharing our vulnerabilities and seeing how we are stewards of each other. If you tell me you're dealing with anxiety, I can give you some support. And behind the scenes, you know, I may take up a little slack and give you a break for something, or I may do some little things. Or I could go and announce to the rooftops, hey, my husband struggles with anxiety and he can't handle anything today and he's stuck in his room. Well, that's not you trusting me with being vulnerable about that.
Right.
And so how can I support you in a way that's not throwing you under the bus? I mean, when we can share and support with one another, and so I'm a safe vessel for you to share vulnerabilities, and it's not going to be something that I'm going to use against you, turn around and use against you. Well, you can't handle that, or something like that. That makes a difference. And it makes a difference on how willing we are to go there. But our relationship, and our most intimate relationship, I mean, you and me as husband and wife, is deeper because we're willing to share that and trust that we're stewards of that.
Well, and the building of that vulnerability opens the doors to, you know, having those conversations about sex and, you know, those deeper conversations that a lot of times couples just avoid and wait for, well, you know, I at least know that birthdays and holidays are coming around. So, you know, that's kind of the expected, you know, or whatever the standards are. But, you know, having that discussion, I mean, it took us building up that vulnerability to us be able to talk about where we desire that, what we desire that life to look like. Otherwise, it's kind of like, you know, you're trying to find each other in a dark room. And that, you know, you need to have a little light in communication. That's what I realized early on in the relationship is if I didn't tell you what I was feeling or struggling with, you weren't going to just magically read my mind.
We are not mind readers at all. And we are looking at life from our perspectives. And so in order to truly see your partner's perspective, there is only one way to do that. And it is not being a steward of their story. It is straight up asking them. It's letting them share their story. That's something that we read, was it last year? We read Atlas of the Heart with Brene Brown. Maybe it was the beginning of this year. And she shared in there how she's changed, how her thoughts have matured as she has grown. And I applaud her for her ability to have grace for growth and pivot her perspective. Look at all of my alliterations there. Isn't that great? Brene Brown, Grace for Growth. Anyway.
What was the other one?
I don't know. I lost it. Pivot her perspective. That was the other one. But so she used to talk about how we could be stewards of others' stories by showing empathy. And in Atlas of the Heart, as she studied emotions and she looked and she really dug deep into all the emotions, she realized it's not our job to be a steward of another person's story. It's our job to give the space for them to share it on their own.
I know a couple of relationships that were wrecked because of that very reason.
Yeah.
And, it's sometimes, I would caution people that are in there trying to change people. It's all right to accent and encourage people's assets and strengths, but trying to change somebody into something is a really, that's some spooky territory for me.
Well, it's funny because, I look at you and me, and who we are now as opposed to who we were 20 years ago is vastly different. We have changed greatly. And I believe a lot of that change has come from what we have affirmed and what we have challenged in one another.
Yeah.
However, I did not in any way paint the picture of who you are now as my agenda. I didn't know this man, and I love this man greatly, and I fall in love with you daily. And it is, it's the permission to be me that as part of what I love about you is that, as we have grown, we've grown and been excited to see who we can fall in love with the next day, not who have we created that we choose to love.
Yeah. Well, and
it's a time of discovery versus an agenda.
I think Tony Robbins said something that really stood out to me one time, that if you're not your spouse's biggest cheerleader, then what are you really? And so it reminds you that sometimes we can be more of a critic, and we can fall into that space of, well, you should, or you could, or you haven't, when we've walked completely over all of what they've already done, even if it's just expected and standard in your world. It got done, and so sometimes we don't always give everybody the benefit of the doubt.
That's so true. So when it comes to your relationships, and we're going to start from inward out, it's that mind, body, soul approach. How are you assessing this for yourself personally? And then go to looking at your partner. What is one thing you can do in each of those areas every day? How can you connect on a physical basis with your partner? Maybe there's something small. Maybe it's not even anything you announce. Maybe this is just something in your head. You make a commitment that for this week, I am going to make it a point to, kiss my partner at 12 o'clock every day. Or one thing we're doing right now, every time it says it's 11:11,